At 8:52 p.m., security cameras were still recording. A man stood in his cell. He walked to the shower, the only spot in the entire prison with no camera coverage. That wasn't an accident. For over a year, someone had been feeding him the exact GPS coordinates of that blind spot, smuggled inside a stolen smartwatch. Beneath that shower floor was a tunnel, lit, ventilated, and over a mile long, with a motorcycle running on rails to move men and equipment through it. He climbed down, he rode out, and the guards who were supposed to be watching him didn't notice he was gone for 25 minutes. This was the second time he had walked out of a maximum security prison. The first time, nobody even needed a tunnel, just a laundry cart and $2.5 million in bribes. This is how Joaquin Guzman, the world's most powerful drug lord, escaped not once, but twice, and what it finally took to bring him down for good. Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loera was born in 1957 into grinding poverty in a rural village in Sinaloa, Mexico. His father beat him. His father grew marijuana just to survive. By his late teens, he had already left home and joined a drug trafficking network based in Guadalajara. He was short, barely 5'6", which earned him the nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life, El Chapo, Shorty. But what he lacked in height, he made up for in ruthlessness and ambition. In the 1970s, he was little more than hired muscle, moving drugs from mountain airstrips toward the US border, until his ruthlessness caught the attention of Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the era's reigning godfather of Mexican trafficking. When Gallardo was finally arrested in 1989, he divided his empire among his top men at a single meeting in Acapulco, and Guzman walked away controlling Sinaloa and the Pacific coast, the seed of everything that came next. By the 1990s, he was running his own operation out of Sinaloa, smuggling cocaine and heroin north into the United States by the ton. He didn't just move drugs, he innovated. He built some of the most sophisticated smuggling tunnels ever constructed under the US-Mexico border, some of them stretching for hundreds of meters, complete with rail carts, lighting, and ventilation systems. By the time authorities finally caught up with him, he had already amassed a fortune that would later land him on Forbes' list of the world's billionaires. Mexican forces first captured him in Guatemala in 1993. He was extradited back to Mexico and sentenced to 20 years for murder and drug trafficking. It should have been the end of his story. Instead, prison became just another branch office. From behind bars, Guzman kept running his cartel with almost no interruption. Guards treated him like royalty. He received new shoes, a mobile phone smuggled inside the prison, and secret visits from his wife and brother that were never supposed to happen. He was permitted family visits every 9 days, strictly from 9 in the morning until 5 in the evening, and by law allowed the equivalent of about $48 a month to buy basic hygiene products. On paper, his conditions looked like near total isolation. 23 hours a day alone, 1 hour outside, forbidden even from playing sports or joining cultural activities other inmates were allowed. In practice, none of it mattered, because the men enforcing those rules were increasingly on his payroll. In 1995, he was transferred to Puente Grande, a facility in Jalisco state that Mexican officials proudly called maximum security. It would prove to be anything but. By January of 2001, Guzman had a serious problem. Mexico's Supreme Court had just made it dramatically easier to extradite prisoners to the United States, and Guzman knew that once he crossed that border in handcuffs, his empire and his freedom were finished for good. So he did what he always did when faced with an obstacle. He paid his way through it. Investigators later estimated the total cost of what happened next at $2.5 million, spread across guards, prison directors, and even officials inside Mexico's own justice ministry. The story he told the guards being paid off was almost absurdly simple. He claimed he was smuggling gold, supposedly extracted from rock inside the prison workshop, and needed it moved out quietly. Nobody who took his money bothered to ask more questions. On the night of January 19th, a guard, known by the nickname El Chito, unlocked the electronic door to Guzman's cell. Waiting outside was a laundry cart, piled high with dirty prison uniforms and sheets. Guzman climbed inside. Another accomplice, a maintenance worker on the payroll, began pushing the cart down the corridor. They passed through hallway after hallway, past checkpoint after checkpoint, doors opening automatically for them the entire way, straight through the main entrance and out into the parking lot. Waiting there was a car. Guzman was helped into the trunk and they drove off into the night. A short distance down the road, at a gas station, the driver stepped inside to pay for fuel. When he came back out to the car, the trunk was open. Guzman was gone, vanished on foot into the darkness. And nobody, not the driver, not the guards, not a single soul at that prison, ever saw exactly which direction he went. It would be 25 minutes before anyone at Puente Grande even realized the country's most valuable prisoner was no longer inside his cell. The fallout was immediate and humiliating for the Mexican government. Investigators eventually concluded that police in the surrounding state of Jalisco had also been paid off, guaranteeing Guzman at least a full day's head start before the military manhunt could even properly organize itself. Dozens of guards, officials, and prison staff were eventually arrested for their role in the escape. One whistleblower, who tried to report the corruption at Puente Grande, disappeared 7 years later, presumed murdered on Guzman's orders. Newspapers across Mexico ran furious editorials asking how a man the government itself had called the most dangerous criminal in the country could simply roll out the front door in a pile of dirty laundry. For the next 13 years, Guzman lived as a fugitive and simultaneously as one of the most powerful criminals on the planet. He expanded the Sinaloa cartel into a global operation, moving product not just into the United States, but into Europe, Asia, and Australia. His personal fortune was estimated at over $1 billion, enough to eventually land him on Forbes' list of the world's billionaires. And for over a decade, despite an $8.8 million combined reward from the American and Mexican governments, he stayed almost entirely one step ahead of every agency hunting him. That finally ended in February of 2014, when Mexican Marines, working with American intelligence, tracked him to a condominium in the coastal city of Mazatlan and took him into custody without a shot fired. This time, officials insisted, would be different. He was transferred to El Altiplano, a federal maximum security prison outside Mexico City, considered by many to be the most secure facility in the entire country. Former Mexican Attorney General Jesus Murillo Caram went on record boasting that there was, in his words, no way Guzman could ever escape custody again. He was wrong within about a year and a half. According to testimony later given by Guzman's former lieutenant, Damaso Lopez, planning for the second escape began almost immediately after his 2014 capture. This time, there would be no laundry cart, no simple bribe to a handful of guards. This time, Guzman's family, allegedly including his own wife, Emma Coronel, coordinated the plot directly with his sons, the men who had taken over day-to-day operations of the cartel while their father was locked away. According to testimony, associates acquired a plot of land directly adjacent to the prison grounds in mid-2014. On it, they began building what looked, to anyone driving past, like an ordinary half-finished house, the kind of unremarkable construction project that dots the Mexican countryside by the thousands. Local gas delivery workers later said the site never once requested a gas hookup in the months it was supposedly being built. Nobody thought that was strange enough to report. The real project was underground. Engineers hired by the cartel began digging a tunnel from that house, aiming for one very specific target: the shower stall inside Guzman's own cell. To hit that target with pinpoint accuracy from hundreds of meters away and 10 meters underground, they needed to know exactly where that shower was, down to the centimeter. That is allegedly where the smuggled smartwatch came in, feeding GPS coordinates out of the prison and into the hands of the men digging toward him. Construction moved slowly and carefully, months at a time, removing an estimated 350 truckloads of dirt and sand without ever alerting a single guard patrolling the grounds above. One former US Immigration and Customs official later said a tunnel of that sophistication would normally take 18 months to 2 years to complete under normal circumstances. This one was finished in about a year. By the summer of 2015, inmates in nearby cells could hear a low, rumbling sound beneath the floor for weeks. Some of them complained to guards about the noise. Nobody investigated. The tunnel that emerged was extraordinary. Just over 1.5 meters tall, barely enough clearance for Guzman's own 5'6" frame to move through comfortably, built largely from PVC piping, fully lit along its entire length, and ventilated so a person could breathe easily more than a mile underground. A vertical shaft, roughly 33 feet deep, connected the shower opening to the main passage below, fitted with a wooden ladder strong enough to bear a person's full weight, its rungs uneven and exhausting to climb, according to journalists later given a guided tour through the abandoned tunnel. At the bottom, a small generator sat humming beside the entrance to the main shaft, powering the lighting system for the entire length of the passage. Running along the floor were 2 rails, and mounted on them was a modified motorcycle rigged with small attached carts, originally used to haul out excavated dirt during construction and later repurposed to carry Guzman himself to freedom. Guzman chose his moment carefully, planning the move for a weekend when the prison traditionally operated with reduced staff. On the evening of July 11, 2015, security footage shows him standing inside his cell. At 8:52 p.m., he walks toward the small dividing wall separating his sleeping area from the shower, the one blind spot in the entire cell that the prison's own camera system did not cover. He crouches down. And then, on the recording, he is simply gone. Beneath the shower floor was an opening barely 50 centimeters wide, just large enough for a man his size to slip through. A ladder dropped 10 meters down into the waiting tunnel. Guzman climbed onto the modified motorcycle and in a matter of minutes rode the entire mile-long length of the passage, smashing the lights behind him as he went, so that anyone who somehow made it into the tunnel afterward would be moving through total darkness. At the far end, the tunnel opened into that unfinished house. Waiting for him there, according to later reports, were clean clothes, a change of identity, and a car. Guards didn't notice he was missing until they came to deliver his evening medication and found an empty cell. An alert went out at 8:52 that same night. What followed was one of the largest manhunts in the history of Mexico. Highway checkpoints went up across multiple states. Border security was placed on immediate high alert. Officials briefly considered shutting down a nearby international airport entirely, though it was later confirmed the airport itself never actually received any such order and continued operating normally throughout the search. And yet, for the second time in 14 years, Guzman seemed to simply dissolve into the landscape. 18 prison employees, guards and officials were detained for questioning in the days that followed. The president of Mexico, who happened to be traveling abroad in France at the exact moment the escape was discovered, faced immediate and brutal ridicule across Mexican media and social platforms, with commentators openly mocking the government's repeated claims that this particular prisoner, of all prisoners, could never get out again. For nearly 6 months, Guzman remained a ghost, reportedly moving between remote hideouts in the mountains of Sinaloa, protected by a network of loyal cartel operatives and villagers who had known his family for generations. It was during this period that Guzman made what would prove to be his most consequential mistake since the escape itself. Years earlier, a Mexican soap opera actress named Kate del Castillo, famous for playing a fictional drug lord on television, had publicly voiced sympathy for Guzman online, and the two had stayed in loose contact ever since. Guzman had long dreamed of having a film made about his life, and he wanted del Castillo, and only del Castillo, to help bring that story to the screen. Through her, American actor Sean Penn arranged to meet Guzman in person at a remote hideout deep in the mountains of the Sierra Madre, reaching the location after a 7-hour journey by truck convoy through jungle terrain. Penn's real intention, only partially disclosed beforehand, was to write a feature interview for Rolling Stone magazine. Guzman, flattered by the Hollywood attention and eager to see his life story dramatized, agreed to sit for questions. The two men met face to face in October of 2015. A second, more formal interview was promised for the following week, but by then Mexican Marines had already launched a raid on the surrounding area, forcing Guzman and his people to scatter and abandon the safe house in a panic. He never appeared in person again, instead recording his answers on video and sending them through intermediaries. The Rolling Stone article, published the day after his eventual capture, became an overnight sensation, and also, according to Mexican officials, a critical break in the case. Investigators later confirmed that tracking the digital trail left behind by the meeting, the phones, the messages, the network of intermediaries who arranged it, helped lead authorities directly to him. In chasing his own legend, Guzman had unknowingly handed his hunters the one thing 13 years on the run had never given them before: a verified, traceable connection to his exact location. His freedom finally ran out in January of 2016, when Mexican Marines, acting on fresh intelligence, cornered him in the city of Los Mochis, back in his home state of Sinaloa. A fierce gun battle broke out as Marines stormed the safe house. 5 of his associates were killed. 1 Marine was wounded. Guzman himself attempted to flee through the city's storm drain system before finally being recaptured, muddy, exhausted, and this time held under a security protocol that left absolutely nothing to chance. Determined not to repeat history a third time, Mexican authorities extradited him to the United States in January of 2017, placing him well outside the reach of the networks of corruption that had freed him twice before. He stood trial in a federal courtroom in Brooklyn, New York, beginning in November of 2018, on charges spanning drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The security surrounding the trial was almost unprecedented for a criminal case on American soil. The jury was kept anonymous and partially sequestered, escorted to and from the courthouse each day by armed federal marshals. Every visitor, reporters included, passed through two separate security screenings, an X-ray machine and a metal detector, just to enter the building, and again to enter the courtroom itself. Cell phones were banned outright for anyone who wasn't an attorney. At one point, court sketch artists were barred from even drawing the face of a particular witness testifying against him, the sketches reviewed and approved by prosecutors before they could be published anywhere. Over nearly 3 months and 35 days of testimony, 56 prosecution witnesses took the stand, describing a criminal enterprise that at times sounded almost too extraordinary to be real. One former bodyguard testified in graphic detail about torture and executions carried out on Guzman's direct orders. Another associate, who had spent 2 years hiding with him in the mountains, described a hidden world of jungle safe houses, military-grade weapons, and constant fear of betrayal, along with details of a diamond-encrusted handgun Guzman kept close at all times. Witnesses were frequently identified in court only by colourful nicknames, a way of shielding their real identities from a cartel with a documented history of hunting down and killing informants. Throughout it all, Guzman's wife, Emma Coronel, a former teenage beauty queen decades younger than her husband, sat in the courtroom gallery almost every single day, at times drawing as much media attention as the defendant himself. On one occasion, appearing in a matching velvet blazer with Guzman as a public show of loyalty. In February of 2019, a jury found him guilty on every single count. He was sentenced to life in prison, plus an additional 30 years, and ordered to forfeit $12.6 billion in assets tied to his crimes. The story of his second escape, in particular, would not have been possible without one crucial detail that only emerged later during that same trial. According to a cooperating witness, it was Emma Coronel herself who had carried messages between Guzman and the men building that tunnel, coordinating construction details on his behalf after visiting him inside the very prison she was allegedly helping him escape. Prosecutors later alleged she personally paid out well over $1 million in bribes tied to prison transfers and construction access in the years surrounding the escape. It would take another 2 years before that role caught up with her. In February of 2021, Emma Coronel herself was arrested at Dulles International Airport outside Washington, D.C., and charged with conspiracy to distribute narcotics and assist her husband's criminal enterprise. She pleaded guilty later that year and was ultimately sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, walking free in September of 2023, having served her time for the very escape that once made her husband a legend. Today, Guzman is held at ADX Florence in Colorado, a federal supermax facility so secure it has earned its own nickname among law enforcement, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. He spends 23 hours of every single day alone in a windowless cell, permitted just 1 hour of outdoor time inside a fortified, individually caged recreation area. There are no laundry carts here, no blind spots in the camera coverage, no unmonitored construction sites conveniently located next door. Whatever loyalty, money, or fear once bought Guzman his freedom twice over, it has no purchase inside these walls. And yet, outside them, his legacy never actually stopped operating. While their father sat in solitary confinement, 2 of his sons, nicknamed collectively Los Chapitos, took over day-to-day leadership of large portions of the Sinaloa cartel, continuing to move narcotics across the same border their father had spent decades perfecting routes through. Even after their own eventual arrests years later, the organization itself proved resilient enough to continue operating, a grim testament to the fact that dismantling a single man, however legendary, has never been the same thing as dismantling the network of corruption, family loyalty, and demand that built him in the first place. 2 escapes, 1 laundry cart, 1 impossibly engineered tunnel. Millions of dollars in bribes, a smuggled smartwatch, a wife accused of coordinating his freedom from the outside. Joaquin Guzman didn't just break out of prison. He exposed, twice over, exactly how deep corruption could run inside an entire national system, and exactly what unlimited money can still buy, even from behind supposedly impenetrable walls. If you had access to that kind of money and that kind of loyalty, do you think any prison could actually hold you? Tell us what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the stories they buried are the ones we're going to dig up, one video at a time.